Good evening, everyone. I call this meeting of the Richfield Planning Commission to order. Today is February 28th, 2022, and this meeting is being held virtually on WebEx. Staff, would you please take attendance of planning commissioners?
Yes, Chair Quam. Chair Quam.
Here.
Commissioner Keneally.
Here.
Commissioner Sturza.
Here.
Commissioner Holmberg Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Rudolph. Commissioner Rudolph, I didn't hear you.
Here.
Thank you. And Commissioner Surma. Commissioner Surma, can you hear us? Okay, I can see Commissioner Surma, but maybe we'll move on and get that audio worked out.
Sure, thank you. So next we have new commissioner introductions. We have 3 new planning commissioners here tonight with our new year. Would each of you please introduce yourselves? You can either just say your name or you can briefly say something about why you came to the Planning Commission. Go ahead, Commissioner Hanson.
I'm Gordon Hanson, and I'm actually a returning member of the Planning Commission. I served on the Planning Commission for 9 years from, it actually seems to be a long time ago now, 2001 to 2010. Always enjoyed the experience, like being involved and contributing to the benefit of the city. So that's what brought me back.
Thank you. Who would like to go next of the, maybe Commissioner Holmberg Johnson, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Eddie Holmberg Johnson. I have lived in the South Minneapolis area my whole life and now live in Richfield, and I really enjoy living here and want to contribute to the community. I'm a special education teacher in Richfield at Seven Hills School.
Well, thank you. Thank you all. And Commissioner Surma, can you hear us yet? Okay, we'll come back to Commissioner Surma, but we're really happy to have you. We're having a little transition on the commission, and it's nice to have a full commission again, so welcome. Feel free to ask questions about process, even during the meeting, that's fine, or in between meetings. Just raise your hand and the chair will call on you. Next, we have approval of the minutes of the January 24th, 2022 regular Planning Commission meeting. Is there a motion and a second to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and for staff, do you need them to say who they are?
Yes, that would be appreciated.
Okay, so go ahead. Could you say who you are when you move in second?
Sturza, I move.
Thanks.
Holmberg Johnson, I second.
Thank you. Any discussion about the minutes of January 24th meeting? All right, so while we're virtual, we're doing roll call. So staff, would you take roll call?
Yes, thank you, Chair Quam.
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Holmberg Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Keneally.
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph.
Aye.
Commissioner Sturza.
Aye.
Commissioner Surma.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. So the
Can you hear
motion
me now?
passes. Yeah, Commissioner Surma, did you want to say who you
No.
were?
I
Welcome.
apologize. Yeah, I was having some technical problems where I could hear everybody, but I could not unmute myself. So
Did you want to
Yeah.
just briefly say your name or what brought you to the Planning Commission?
yes, hello everybody. I'm Ben Surba, brand new member to the Planning Commission, recent resident of Richfield within the last year. I'm a planner by day, and I was drawn to the Planning Commission because this is my passion, and I want to see what I can do to help Richfield advance. Thank you. Belatedly.
Yeah, welcome. All right, so that brings us to open forum. We have this every month. It's a chance for the public to call in live during our meeting or when we are back at City Hall. You can come in person and share for up to 3 minutes on anything that's not on the Planning Commission's agenda that you think might be of interest to us. So you also can write or call ahead a voicemail. Do we have any of those, staff? Oh, first of all, I'll say the phone number, sorry, 612-861 0651 to call in live tonight, and that's the same number for the public hearings. Staff, did we have any calls or letters ahead of time or emails for open forum?
Yes, Chair Kwan, we did have one email, and I can read that.
Thank you.
So this is from Ann and Doug Sewich at 6324 Aldrich Avenue. So they say, ironically, there's a lot of discussion around parking and city parking requirements during January's planning meeting, which is the very issue we have with the proposed brew pub. We live at 6324 Aldrich Avenue. We border the Henley Lakeside developments. Since they opened, we've regularly had their guests parking on the 6300 block of Aldrich because they say there's no guest parking available at Henley/Lakeside. This creates additional congestion on an already tight Aldrich cul-de-sac. We've had complaints from workers who can't navigate or park their trucks. The snowplows can't clear the street. So where would these brew pub patrons park? How many spaces would the pub be required to provide? What about parking for the adjacent amphitheater? This project sounds like it has the potential to make an already bad parking situation much worse. Thank you for sharing our brew pub parking concerns with the Planning Commission.
Thanks, Nellie. Any others?
That was it.
Okay, that's a rare thing to have something at open forum. Do we have anyone holding on the line, staff?
Chair Kwan, we do not currently have any callers.
Okay, we'll just wait about 15 seconds. 612-861-0651. And this is just for open forum, not for the public hearings yet. Okay, seeing as there are no callers, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is approval of tonight's agenda. So just really quickly, new commissioners, you do have a chance to say you disagree with something on the agenda or you think something should be added. So that's why we vote on it. Same with the minutes from the meeting before. If you think they're inaccurate or something, you have a chance to make a motion and have us vote on it. So anyway, approval of tonight's agenda. I will move that. Is there a second? This is Chair Kwan.
Second. Commissioner Hanson.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on tonight's agenda? Okay, Melissa, would you take roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. Chair Quam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Holmberg Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Keneally,
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph,
Aye.
Commissioner Sturza,
Aye.
Commissioner Surma.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to other business. So we're moving along here. So this is our annual meeting, and it is for all the commissions. So that we have election of Planning Commission Chairperson, which is what I'm doing right now, Vice Chairperson, and Secretary. Staff, would you read your report, please?
Yes, thank you. The bylaws of the Planning Commission require that the Planning Commission hold an annual organizational meeting at the first regular meeting in February and elect from its membership a chairperson, vice chairperson, and secretary. Any member of the Planning Commission may nominate another member, or they may nominate theirself. A nomination of an officer requires a motion, a second, and a majority vote. According to the bylaws, Part 2 organization, a majority vote is necessary to first elect a chairperson and then to elect the remaining officers. The chairperson, vice chairperson, and secretary are to take office immediately upon election and hold office until their successors are elected next year. The chairperson is responsible for conducting all Planning Commission meetings and public hearings. The chairperson is also responsible for representing the commission in dealing with the city council and staff. The vice chairperson fulfills the responsibilities of the chairperson in the event the chairperson is absent. The secretary assumes these responsibilities when both the chairperson and the vice chairperson are absent and signs all minutes and official commission documents.
Is that the end of the report?
Oh, yeah, that's
Okay.
the end.
All right, thanks. So before we So first is election of a chairperson for our commission. We can have more than one nomination. You can nominate yourself. And since we're voting on it, I was thinking maybe we could first discuss, see who wants to be nominated, and then someone could make a motion. And if you don't want that person, you could just vote no and nominate, make a motion for the person you want. Does that make sense to commissioners?
Yes, Commissioner Quam, are you willing to do it another year?
Well, that's perfect timing, Commissioner Holmberg Johnson. I've decided to pass on the baton. I don't want to dominate the role, and I think it's a really good learning experience. So I'm I've decided not to do it again. And I nominate Commissioner Rudolph for the role of chair. He's been on here as long as me, 4 or 5 years. He's been committed, and he's our current secretary and acting vice chair. I think he'd do a good job. But like I said, please don't feel pressure. You can nominate a second person on any of these. So any other discussion before I make a motion? Commissioners? Anyone else interested? Okay, I will make a motion that we elect Commissioner Rudolph as our Planning Commission Chair, effective immediately at our next meeting. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you. Discussion?
First of all, I would like to say I would be honored to, me and you, Commissioner Quam, we joined the Planning Commission at the same time. And it's been a definite learning experience for both of us and a growing experience over the last 4 years that we've served on the Planning Commission.
Well, thank you for accepting the possibility of that role. It's quite a bit of work. The pay is low. Well, I think it's quite a bit of work. It's as much work as you want it to be. And I've really just want to thank you all for electing me the last 2 years. It really meant a lot to me, especially to be reelected last year and the nice things you said. And so anyway, with that, any other discussion about this motion? All right, staff, would you take roll, please, on Commissioner Rudolph being our next chair?
Yes, Chair Quam.
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Holmberg Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Keneally.
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph.
Aye.
Commissioner Stursa.
Aye.
Commissioner Surma.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thanks, Melissa. Congratulations, Jim.
Thank you. I've got some big shoes to fill. You have been a fantastic person in this role for the last couple of years.
Thank you. It's we all try our best, I think. So, but thanks. All right. So next we have the office of vice chairperson, who is kind of on call to do the meeting a little bit in case the chair is out of town or sick or has technical difficulty or something. Which so just like staff said, it's all the same things, but you do it only if the chair can't do that role. So do we have any nominations for vice chairperson for the coming year? And the term is 1 year. Anybody interested in nominating themselves? It might, I will do it if no one else wants to, but that's just only.
Chair Quam, would you be willing to take a term of vice chair?
Yes, I would. If no one else wants it, I'd be happy to, because I kind of know how the format goes, so it's pretty easy to step in. But any other nominations, please speak up. Okay, Jim, or Commissioner Rudolph, do you want to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion and nominate Chair Quam as vice chair.
Second, Commissioner Stursa.
Thank you. Discussion? All right, staff, would you please take roll on my being vice chair?
Yes, Chair Quam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Holmberg Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Keneally,
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph,
Aye.
Commissioner Stursa,
Aye.
Commissioner Surma.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you. All right, so that brings us to the role of secretary who signs the documents, basically, I think all virtually, or maybe that's done right at the desk. I'm not sure, but anyway, you sign things.
Chair Quam,
Nellie, yeah, Commissioner.
I'm the outgoing secretary that I've been the secretary for the last 2 years. So you sign all the documents. Currently, all documents are signed virtually. And it's a great role to start getting into the leadership of the planning commission. I think any of the current members that have Commissioner Neely or Commissioner Stursa, I would highly encourage you to be considered for this role.
I agree. This is Chair Quam, I agree. I'm hoping Mr. Stursa or Keneally are willing to do that just because you've been with us. Not exactly the same amount of time, but a couple years maybe. So are either of you willing to take secretary role?
I'm willing to, but I want to give Commissioner Stursa a chance to say what she thinks as well.
I'd be willing to, but I defer to you, Commissioner Keneally. If you're willing to do it, I think that you would do a great job. So
okay.
I will nominate Commissioner Keneally to be secretary.
Okay, will you
Or
move?
make a motion. Yep.
All right, I second. Discussion on Commissioner Keneally being our secretary. All right, staff, would you please take roll?
Chair Quam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Holmberg Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Keneally,
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph,
Aye.
Commissioner Stursa,
Aye.
Commissioner Surma.
Aye.
The motion passes.
All right, congratulations, Commissioner Keneally. And thank you. All right, that brings us to the next item, which is liaison appointments to our various committees or commissions. Staff, do you have a report for that?
Yes, thank you. All right. The role of a liaison is to keep the Planning Commission informed of other work or decisions happening in the city by attending or watching meetings or reading recent meeting minutes and sharing updates with members of the Planning Commission. A description of each liaison position is below. So the City Council is the legislative branch of the city government. The City Council is responsible for the efficient operation of the city through the enactment of policies and ordinances that are administered by staff. The City Council meets every second and fourth Tuesday at 7 p.m., currently via WebEx. Commissioner Rosenberg served as liaison to the City Council for 2021. And then the Community Services Commission is an advisory group appointed by the City Council to discuss and provide feedback on city issues related to recreation, parks, public works, and any other issues as directed. The Community Services Commission meets on the third Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m., currently via WebEx. Commissioner Rudolph served as liaison to the Community Services Advisory Commission in 2021. And then the Housing and Redevelopment Authority, or the HRA, is responsible for certain types of housing, economic, and commercial/industrial development and redevelopment in the city. The HRA meets every third Monday at 7 p.m., currently via WebEx. Commissioner Stursa served as a liaison to the HRA in 2021. The Richfield School Board is comprised of locally elected public officials who provide strategic guidance for the Richfield Public Schools and oversee and review the school's management. Although the Richfield Public Schools are a completely separate entity from Richfield City Government, the Planning Commission also appoints a liaison to the Richfield School Board. The school board generally meets the first and third Monday of each month at 7 p.m. Meetings are also held virtually. This liaison position was vacant in 2021. And then the Transportation Commission was appointed by the City Council to review transportation-related topics and to make recommendations to the City Council. The committee meets the first Wednesday of each month at 7 p.m. Via WebEx. And Commissioner Keneally served as liaison to the Transportation Committee in 2021. The Chamber of Commerce, though a separate entity from Richfield City Government, the Chamber of Commerce provides a connection between the City of Richfield and our local business community. The Chamber's goal is to connect businesses for a prosperous community. The liaison position was vacant in 2021. And lastly, the Sustainability Commission, which works to support the education, promotion, and implementation of environmentally sustainable measures and practices in the City of Richfield. The board also makes recommendations to the City Council regarding sustainability-related initiatives and policies. Commissioner Pinn served as liaison to HRA in 2021. And that is it for staff report.
Thank you, Nellie. So you heard the various ones. Are there any questions from the new commissioners about what you're required? If you're not required to do a liaison position, but if you do one, you're basically reporting to us if you think there's something we'd be interested in, either by watching the meeting, reading the minutes, all the things Nellie just said. Are there any questions about it? Okay, and even though the recommendation was to do this by motion, I think the other years I've been here, we just did it informally and the bylaws don't specify. So if it's okay with commissioners that we just, volunteer for committee liaison roles informally, then I'd rather do it that way. It's less cumbersome. Is that okay? All right. Thanks for the nod, Melissa. All right, so there are several. The first one on the list is City Council. I'd be interested in doing that, but I'm willing to hear if someone else is. Susan Rosenberg had been doing it for some years and just was waiting for my chance to be able to do that. So I'd love to do that liaison role. And if someone else wants it, we'll do a vote.
May I make a motion to nominate Chair Kwong?
Thank you. I'll accept, and I think since no one else is speaking up, I think we can just say I'm going to do that. We'll skip the motion and seconding and voting if that's okay. All right. Thank you for the vote. Okay, the next one. So I'll do the City Council. The next one is Community Services Advisory Commission. Volunteer.
Chair Quam, were you a liaison as chair last year?
No.
Okay.
I was the year before though when I was chair. So it's up to you.
I would like to be able to get seated into my role for a little bit. I know it's a lot more additional responsibilities, but administration is a great one to follow.
Yeah. Community Services Advisory Commission, Commissioner Rudolph had been doing it, but he's going to be chair, so it is an interesting one. You don't need any experience.
Chair Quam, I can do that again.
Okay.
It wasn't a lot of extra work.
Thanks, Commissioner Rudolph. Okay, the next one is Housing and Redevelopment, or HRA. Someone interested?
I'd be happy to do that again this year.
Wonderful. All right, Commissioner Sturso will do HRA again. The next one is currently vacant school board. Is anyone interested in doing that?
I would be willing to do that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who said that? I couldn't.
I'm sorry, Eddie Holmberg Johnson.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, thanks. So Commissioner Holmberg Johnson will be our liaison to the school board. Next one is Transportation Commission.
I'd like to do that. This is
Okay.
Ben Surma, if you don't mind.
And anybody want to arm wrestle for it? Do you want to do a vote? Anyone?
I've enjoyed being involved there, but I'm happy to let Ben give it a whirl.
That's very nice of you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Brandon.
All right, so Commissioner Surma is our liaison to Transportation Commission. Next is Chamber of Commerce. Anyone? there aren't many of us left to take one, I don't think. All right, and lastly is the Sustainability Commission. Commissioner Pinn did that. I think it overlaps kind of with Commissioner Keneally. All right.
Yeah, I'd be happy to explore a liaison for that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we filled them all except Chamber of Commerce. Is that what the note taker got?
Yes, Chair Quam.
Okay, great. Thanks everybody for stepping up. So that's the end of that part of our agenda. Next, we will, part of also the annual meeting is to review the Planning Commission bylaws. Staff, would you read your report, please?
Yes, thank you. So part 3, section 3 of our bylaws requires that the Planning Commission review the bylaws each year at the February organizational meeting. Staff is not recommending any changes to the bylaws this year. And the bylaws should be attached in your agenda packet. And that's staff report.
Oh, okay. So I assume you've all read them. Anybody have any comments or motions to make about anything in the bylaws? Or questions? Okay, if not, then no action is necessary by us. Next brings us to the public hearings part of the meeting. I'm going to repeat the phone number a couple times so you can call in if you hear something or if you have anything you want to share. Right now you can call in 612-861-0651 and an operator will give you instructions. They're pretty easy. So please feel encouraged to call in. We'd love to hear from you. The first public hearing is a public hearing to consider a request for a conditional use permit allowing a Class 3 restaurant at 466th Street East, also known as Richfield Shops. Staff, would you please read your report?
Yes, thank you, Chair Quam. La Michoacana Tasty, the applicant, is proposing to open a Class 3 restaurant, which is a fast food / convenience restaurant, in the multi-tenant shopping center known as Richfield Shops. Fast food / convenience restaurants are those where customers order and are served their food at a counter to be taken to a table or a counter to be consumed. The applicant is not proposing a drive-through facility. Class 3 restaurants are a conditionally permitted use in the general business C2 district. The applicant is proposing to occupy 2,816 square feet of the property. This space was previously occupied by Payless Shoes. The entire shopping center would continue to meet parking requirements when accounting for the proposed use as calculated by the zoning code, as further described in the policy section of this report. A full discussion of the conditional use permit CUP requirements can be found in an attachment to this report. Finding that the proposal meets requirements, staff recommends approval of the CUP. And the applicant, Ms. Velasquez, is here, and staff can also stand for any questions.
Thank you, staff. So would the applicant like to share anything right now at this time?
That was a really nice introduction. Well, just want to talk about a little bit what we've been doing for maybe the last couple 11 years ago. Many of you may know Andale, located down the street in Nicollet Avenue and 77th Street. Jorge is one of the owners from Andale, and he is actually such a great man, and he's given me the opportunity to open La Michoacana Tasty. And just so maybe it's not as much as important as I think, but I want to share with you that I was an immigrant back ago, and so now I'm a DACA student. Well, I already graduated, but I'm a DACA woman, and I am so proud to be working since I got here back in 2000, I think. So I just want to share with you what a blessing it is to have the opportunity to open this new business with Jorge Rangel.
Thank you so much. And If you just stand by for questions that the commissioners might have, that would be great. So this is the public hearing. First of all, the commissioners have any questions of the applicant or staff at this time? So the process, really briefly, is we have a chance for commissioners to ask questions. Then I'll open the public hearing for people to call in at that number I shared, or maybe they've written in ahead of time. Then we close the public hearing. The commissioners discuss or debate or ask more questions, and then they vote. So that's kind of how it will go. So commissioners have any questions up front for staff or the applicant? Would you just, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Holmberg Johnson.
I'm looking in the staff report and it says that intoxicating liquor won't exceed 5% of the annual revenue. Is the liquor license included in the conditional use permit? Is that all rolled together?
Commissioner Holmberg Johnson, no, the liquor license is separate, so business licensing handles that. And it's not specifically part of a conditional use permit.
Thank you.
And they are not requesting a drive-through, so what would be the process if in the future they wanted a drive-through? They can't do that, right? Staff?
Yeah, Chair Quam, they would be able to apply for an amendment to a conditional use permit. So that would be a second land use approval that they would need, and they'd need to meet certain requirements for drive-throughs. So that's also not part of this right now.
Would they come to the planning commission if they chose such an amendment, or was that something that they do just through staff?
You know, I'm not sure if it would be a major amendment. Melissa, it would be a major?
Chair Quam, yes, it would be a major amendment and it would need to come back for another public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions right now? You'll have a chance for questions later too. Commissioner Keneally and then Commissioner Surma.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just noticing on the staff report that it notes the restaurant doesn't have in-vehicle sales or service. And I'm curious, does that prevent them from being able to do like curbside pickup like a lot of restaurants are doing right now?
Commissioner Keneally, that's a good question. I don't think our ordinance really contemplated the type of service that's happening now in reaction to the pandemic. In general, what that was speaking to were kind of those old-fashioned, they're kind of kitschy now, where someone on roller skates might deliver your food while you're parked in a parking lot. So I do not think that that is not the way we have read this ordinance, that it would prohibit curbside pickup.
Thank you for clarifying.
Great question. Commissioner Surma?
Thank you. Yeah, since I'm new to the commission, I just want to hear it from the folks that know of, what the criteria are for this, something like this to come to the commission for approval. I had a little bit of discussion with Ryan and Nellie the other day just to clarify these terms, but I just think it'd be helpful if we explain why this matter is before us today.
Commissioner Surma, yes. So this conditional use permit application is here because I want to get the wording right. So a class 3 restaurant is a conditionally allowed use in this district. So they would need a conditional use permit in order to operate. So some uses are permitted outright and some uses require a conditional use permit. So that's why they're here requesting a conditional use permit. Melissa, did you want to add anything else? I hope I covered that.
Sure. I was not part of the earlier discussion, so I'm not entirely sure where Commissioner Surma is going, but in general, conditional use permits are used when there is a use that the community has decided it is something that they would like to allow in an area, but there are additional considerations to take into account when you're allowing that type of use. So generally there's a list of conditions. It is conditionally permitted, and if you meet those conditions of the code, the use is permitted. That type of use is required by statute to have a public hearing at the Planning Commission or at the City Council, depending on how your city sets that up. So that is why there is a public hearing for this. It is a conditionally permitted use in our code. Therefore, it requires a public hearing.
Anyone else? Okay, I will open the public hearing now. You can call in 612-861-0651, and it's just on this item. Staff, did we have any emails or calls or anything ahead of the meeting for this item?
Chair Quam, we did not.
Okay. And other staff, do we have any callers on hold?
Chair Kwan, we do not have any callers holding.
Okay, 612-861-0651. Wait another 30 seconds. And just, Latanya, are you fielding the calls?
Yes, Chair Kwan, I am here in council chambers fielding the calls.
Okay, so I'm just gonna wait 30 seconds and just jump in if someone's there, otherwise I'll assume they're not. Okay.
Okay, will do.
Thanks. Would one of the commissioners like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
So move. Hanson.
Thank you. Second?
Holmberg Johnson, second.
Okay. Discussion on closing the public hearing. Melissa, would you please take roll?
Yes, thank you, Chair Quam.
Okay.
Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Holmberg Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Keneally.
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph.
Aye.
Commissioner Stursa.
Aye.
Commissioner Surma.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you. All right, commissioners, it's time for us to discuss this and make a motion or ask more questions. I would ask the applicants not to jump in unless you're asked a question at this point so that we can have a discussion. But you might be, like I said, you might be asked a question. So any thoughts, commissioners? Thoughts or questions? Just raise your hand. Commissioner Stursa?
It's in reviewing the information, I think that they've met all of the conditions in staff report. I think that they'd make a lovely addition to the city, and I am excited to support their conditional use permit.
Thank you. Other Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, I guess I would say, and I'm not quite sure why I'm coming across twice. Is my voice coming across kind of ugly?
A little choppy.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why that's happening, but anyways, I really think the applicant is a great addition to the community. I'm always an advocate of new independent businesses in town, so I would really support this initiative.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I tend to agree that I think this would be a great addition to our community.
Yeah. Same here. I'm gonna echo that sentiment. I'm a big fan of On Delay, and I can't wait to eat at the new place.
Chair Quam, I move that we approve the conditional use permit.
Okay, can you just hold off a minute and see if anyone else has discussion and then make a motion that would be a little easier for me to follow. This is Chair Quam, and I wanted to say I think this is I like that it's walk up down, because seems like just a perfect, like it said in the report, a lot of foot traffic over there by the hub and stuff. And this parking, I had a question about, this is not going to affect how I vote, but there's a condition about parking if you're over 20,000 square feet or something. So that applies to the whole building of 60,000 square feet. Is that how that works, staff?
Chair Quam, I am not sure. Ryan, planner,
Okay.
was also wrote this, so I'm not totally sure where it says that.
Chair Quam, that condition refers to when you calculate parking separately for restaurants versus when it's just included as part of the overall shopping center calculation. Can you maybe
that would be
your
helpful.
question again?
Sorry, it's hard to have them both up when I'm cheering. Just a sec.
If I may, Chair, I'm looking
Yes.
at page 22 of the packet, I believe, and it reads, well, this isn't going to answer your question. I'm gonna sit back. Never mind.
Yeah, I think, but thanks. Yeah, that is the right page. Thanks, Commissioner Keneally. So under the bullet, typically additional parking, required parking is to be provided with a change from a retail use to restaurant. Unless the criteria is met, the shopping center floor area is over 20,000 square feet. So I was just wondering how that works when this is just a part of it. This is 2,000 square feet out of 60. And did you already, is that what could you say it again, Melissa, if that's what you already said?
Sure, Chair Quam. What it's saying there is that if a restaurant component is a large portion of a small shopping center, we're going to calculate that parking for the restaurant separately. If it is part of a larger shopping center where there's a larger parking field in general, more opportunity to share, that's one of the criteria by which we would say that we do not need to calculate them separately when the shopping center is over 20,000 square feet.
I see. That's clear. Thanks so much. Any other discussion or questions before we have a motion? Okay, Commissioner Holmberg Johnson, did you make the motion or did you start to? Do you want to make it again?
Yes, I move that the conditional use permit be approved.
Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Surma.
Thank you. All right, any discussion? All right, staff, would you please take a roll?
Yes, Chair Quam.
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Holmberg Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Keneally.
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph.
Aye.
Commissioner Stursa.
Aye.
Commissioner Surma.
Aye.
The motion passes.
All right, congratulations. Good luck on your new endeavor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Should we leave the meeting?
That would probably be best. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Good night. Bye-bye. All right, so that brings us to our second public hearing. which is to consider a variance request for more impervious surface coverage than allowed by the zoning code at 6500 Logan Avenue South. Staff, would you read your report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Quam. The property at 6500 Logan Avenue South is zoned R, single-family residential. The homeowner would like to install a backyard swimming pool, which is permitted as an accessory residential use. In the R district, the maximum impervious surface allowed is 45% of the lot. This property is roughly 8,122 square feet in area, so the maximum of 3,655 square feet of impervious surface coverage would be allowed. The current impervious surface of the lot totals roughly 3,188 square feet, about 39.25% of the lot, giving the homeowners about 476 square feet excess area on which to build or pave. The homeowner is proposing a total of 862 square feet of new pavement for the pool and equipment pad. They plan to remove 143 square feet of an existing patio, bringing the total proposed impervious surface coverage to 3,907 square feet, or about 48.1% of the lot. So that's about 252 square feet above the maximum. This total includes all required pool equipment and a concrete surrounding. The proposed pool area is already behind a privacy fence, and the homeowners are willing to commission a survey showing minimal impact to stormwater runoff as a provision of the variance should it be approved. In order to grant a variance, the Commission must find that all 6 criteria identified in subsection 547.11 of the City Code are met. A full discussion of these criteria is included in the policy section of this report. It is the opinion of staff that the criteria for granting a variance are not met, and staff recommends denial of this variance request as there are neither practical difficulties nor unique circumstances that apply to this property. Staff is here for any questions, and the applicant, Brent Kruger, is also here and can answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks. Before we start, would the applicant like to say something right now? Mr. Kruger?
Yes, thank you. I'd love to. Hi, I'm Brant Kruger, 6500 Logan Avenue South, and proud 18-year resident of Richfield. I'll try to keep my comments as concise as possible. I do have a couple of visuals that I'd love to share. So if you do have the ability to bring me up full screen on your devices, you have a little time between now and then to do so. First and foremost, I want to say how much I truly do. I want to get it on the record how much I truly appreciate staff and all of their help. Nellie and especially Ryan, who's had the patience of a saint with me and all of my questions. This is not something that I've ever done before, so their help has really, truly been appreciated. This isn't a project that we entered into lightly. We've been working with city staff for months now. We were honestly a little surprised to hear that staff were recommending against approving the variance. As part of this process, I actually submitted a data request for the variance applications for the last 5 years. And of those, the only 2 that were denied were cases where the current owners created the problem that they were trying to get a variance for in flagrant violation of code. The vast majority of the granted variances have to do with property owners dealing with the hands that were dealt to them by previous owners and property developers. Things like because the house was built too close to the setback, the code doesn't allow for putting an air conditioning unit on that side of the house where it makes the most sense to put it. So not punishing homeowners for the choices made by the property developers. In addition to that, city staff and this body have shown a willingness to look at the bigger picture of a situation, most recently with the Lund's Penn Avenue project, where a variance was granted in regards to the impervious surface restrictions by treating the 2 adjacent properties as one, and then looking at the overall impervious surfaces. You looked at the bigger picture and not just the letter of the law. So those are the 2 things that I'm asking you to do here. Take into account the unusual circumstances of the property and to take a look at the bigger picture. On the unusual circumstances side, I have to respectfully disagree with staff's assessment that, quote, the house on the property is slightly larger than other homes in the area, end quote. By all accounts, it was built as a show home by the developer, and the house footprint, not the square footage of living space and not counting the driveway or the sidewalk, but just the footprint of the house is over 2,100 square feet. Now, it's my understanding that the average square footage of Richfield houses is 1,400 to 1,800 square feet total living space. So I have to respectfully disagree with the assessment that this is only slightly larger than other homes in the area. This is a very unusually large footprint for a house in Richfield. So there are definitely unusual circumstances to the lot, which were not of our own making. Now, the plan that we've proposed only puts us over the hardcover restriction by 3%. And staff's response to the majority of the rest of the variance criteria is totally understandable. Why not just make it smaller? So to be clear, we started with what's considered to be a stock size for a pool, and then we chopped a little bit off here and a little bit off there to make it compliant with all of the other code requirements regarding setback and things like that. And that's how we arrived at the 18 by 27 plan that we've proposed, which again is only 3% over the hardcover limit. But you can't just take the whole thing, grab the handle, and make it smaller. The math doesn't work like that because there are things that you can't reduce. The equipment pad can't be made any smaller, and the side skirting has to be a minimum of 3 feet on 3 sides and 5 feet on the 4th side. So making just that 3% adjustment, which sounds small, actually results in a 40% decrease in the size of the pool. And so what you get is actually more like a diving well or a really, really large hot tub. There are literally larger pools available on Amazon. So it's not something that you can do any laps in or have a nice gradual slope down to the deep end. So that's why it's not really just practical to just make it smaller. Now, one more thing, and then I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. Our original plan actually had built-in mitigation strategies to account for the overage of impervious hardcover because we wanted to make sure that we were in harmony with the spirit of the code. Staff acknowledges that there would be no negative visual impact to the project. So we wanted to make sure that there was no negative impact on the stormwater runoff and that there are actually things that you can do to offset addition of impervious hardcover. City engineering asked us to remove those mitigation strategies. They didn't think the overage would cause any major issues. They didn't want us using those strategies where this property is located. And so this is where I'm asking you to look at the whole picture. Because of the large amount of green space still on the overall lot, it's incredibly unlikely that this small overage will have any major impact on the stormwater runoff. If you do factor in the boulevard, the impervious surface after the project would actually be closer to 39% of the overall lot. Nonetheless, though, just in case, engineering recommended that we get a civil survey done, and that's something we're happy to do. We're happy to make that a provision of granting the variance, that we do produce a survey to city engineering satisfaction that our small overage on impervious hardcover won't have a significant impact on the property's rainwater runoff. So with respect, we do believe that there are unusual circumstances to the property that were not of our making. If we were designing the property from scratch, we would have reduced the footprint of the house in order to make room for the pool. This is our retirement plan. Some people want a cabin on a lake, others want a boat, others want the condo down south. So if it were up to us, we would have literally made the house smaller in order to make that dream a reality. But that's not something that we can do now. We've tried very hard to design the project so that it's in harmony with the purpose and intent of the code. And we're happy to make producing a survey showing minimal impact to stormwater runoff a provision of this variance. Given the enormous boulevard surrounding the corner lot, there's plenty of green space for stormwater runoff, and we're confident that that impact will be minimal. So we sincerely hope that you'll take all of that into account, the unusual circumstances of the project, the bigger picture of the lot in general, and approve this variance provisionally based on the outcome of the survey. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Well,
Okay, so at this time, commissioners, if you have questions before, and then we will open the public hearing. Commissioner Hanson?
I have a question actually for staff. It was noted in the document that there are swimming pools of this size elsewhere in the neighborhood. And then as Mr. Kruger mentioned, is the footprint of the house is larger than the normal Richfield house. So that puts us at that 3% over the impervious kind of standard that we have. if this variance would be approved, would this create a new precedent in the community? Or are there other examples of where the amount of impervious surface on a typical single family home is really at the same level?
Commissioner Hanson, so there are similar pools in the neighborhood, and they did not have to go through planning commission, probably because they met that impervious surface limit. The house is slightly larger maybe than some of the neighborhood houses, but it comes down to that impervious surface limit and the sort of a state statute directed rule that our zoning code has to match. So it does come down to meeting those 6 criteria. And as for setting a precedent, I think Melissa probably has more insight into the legal side of that. I don't know, I'll let Melissa answer that part.
Commissioner Hanson, in variance cases, it is wise to think about a precedent that you might be setting. In this case, the homeowner is asking you to consider their circumstances unique. If you were to grant this variance and make a case that there were, in fact, these very unique circumstances related to this lot, I think that is what you are using to protect you from setting a precedent where all of a sudden everyone is allowed to exceed impervious surface limits. So if that in a variance case, that's generally what you're looking at. Is this unique? And if it is truly unique, that precedent setting issue is less of a concern. Does that help to answer?
Yeah, no, I think that helps clarify.
Commissioner Holmberg Johnson, and then I would like to chime in.
As I read the report from staff, in order to grant the variance, correct, all of the 6 standards have to be met to grant it. And the one is the hardship one. And I think from what I understand, staff says that there is no hardship because the homeowner can still use the house as a single family home, which is what it was built for, and can still make a smaller pool. So we would have to say, in order to approve it, we would have to say that there is indeed a hardship, correct? But if there is no hardship because the homeowner still can use it as a home, it seems to me that it would be obvious that we should deny the variance.
This is okay. Nellie.
Could I respond to that?
No, just a minute. Nellie, were you trying to speak? You're muted.
Sorry, I assume the question was directed at staff. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, I was just wondering if I'm understanding it correctly, that because the homeowners can still use, there is no hardship because the homeowner still can use their home. So therefore, because of that reason, a variance isn't permitted because it would fail the 6 standard or the 6 qualifications that are required.
Yes, that is staff's assessment. Yes, correct.
Chair Quam, could I add?
Yeah.
Sure. So just in terms of terminology, hardship is an old term that was used in statute. The terminology now is practical difficulty. There has to be a practical difficulty that would deny the homeowner reasonable use of the property. So that doesn't mean any reasonable use. It doesn't mean that they can't use it at all. They have to be asking for something that your code generally allows, like an air conditioning unit or like a swimming pool even, but they can't do it because of some regulation. It does not say that you are guaranteed the right to build a swimming pool or an accessory like that. It's saying that there is something unusual about this lot and it is denying the homeowner a reasonable use of their property that we would generally want to allow. Is that more clear?
Okay, this is Chair Quam. We're getting a little into discussion, so I'm gonna pretty soon open up the public hearing, but since we're into it, I just want to what's the word? Reiterate that these variances are hard, that I mean, staff generally tries to bring people to yes. These variances, we've run into this before and they're really tough, and it doesn't matter how much we like the idea or the person or the, you know, they have to meet those 5 or 6 criteria depending on how you break it out. They have to be a unique circumstance. And now I do have a question for staff, like it was there the unique circumstance not created by the homeowner or applicant. What if it was created by someone before them, so as in a house with a big footprint? Is that part of that same group? Does that make sense? So this was created by someone, a homeowner before them or an owner before them. So how does that apply here?
Chair Quam, so yes, in theory, if a previous owner created a circumstance that that made it harder for the current owner to have a reasonable use, that would factor in. It is staff's assessment that the size of the house does not factor in. It's a big house, but it's not overly large, I guess, is our assessment. I don't know if Melissa wants to add anything else.
And then the other one is, I just don't, it has to meet them all, not just some of them. And I don't see how it's meeting the practical difficulty criteria. So even if one of them isn't met, we can't approve it legally. I'm not sure about the reference to the Byerly's variance. It doesn't ring a bell. That makes me curious. I don't know if we want to go there, but I remember our variances pretty well, and that would go down the list and they have to be, we don't have an option otherwise. So Commissioner Sursa.
Thank you, Chair Quam. I just have a question. I'll hold my comments until after we open the public hearing. But a question of the applicant. I'm curious to see if you had considered reducing impervious surface in other areas of your home, such as your driveway, in order to comply, and what the difficulties in doing that would be.
Yeah, we absolutely did. As part of the report there, you'll see that we're tearing out an existing patio to try and squeeze as much out of that as possible. The driveway and front sidewalk, there's not a lot we can do to pull that out. We did look into, like I said, we were back and forth with staff for months on this, trying to be in harmony. We would never want to mess with Richfield's groundwater. It's something that we love about the city here, is the quality of the water. We looked into impervious driveway tiles that could replace the driveway. That's actually in the code, but you have to get special permission from the director. And they're pretty unpleasant. Like it doesn't work very well and would radically change the appearance of the house. They basically look like bricks. So we did go down that road. It was not something that city recommended either. There's really just nowhere else to tear out impervious hardcover on this surface. When you start to include, I'd have to bring up the worksheet that's in the packet. Again, that 2,100 square feet is just the house footprint. When you add in driveway and things like that, it goes up even more from there. I would really like to address the practical difficulties, since that was brought up. Would that be all right if I address that?
Chair Quam, can I follow up with city staff first in terms of the driveway reduction? Is that something that city staff did not think reducing impervious surface on the driveway was recommended? If that's what I'm hearing, he was told.
Commissioner Sturza, so there are permeable pavers that you can do in driveways. It's a product that is available, but they lose permeability after a time. They require a lot of maintenance. They don't really work. So we still count paved areas as impermeable. So even if you buy, you rip out your whole driveway and put pavers in, and they're they're marketed as pervious pavers, the city of Richfield still counts it as impervious surface. So you could remove some parts of the driveway to make it smaller, but it wouldn't make a huge difference even if you replace the entire thing with pavers.
Okay, this is Chair Kwam. So, Mr. Kruger, if you wouldn't mind waiting till after the public hearing to talk about practical difficulties, but I wanted to get to the questions of the three commissioners I think have raised your hands. So I'm gonna go with Commissioner Surma, then Commissioner Rudolph, then Commissioner Keneally. If you could ask your questions, then we'll open the public hearing.
Yes, so my question is related to the, in the meeting packet, the worksheet that the applicant mentioned from the contractor in which the impervious surface calculations were made. For those of you looking, it's page 48 in the PDF. There's a note beneath all the calculations that says impervious surface calculations on survey are not correct. Driveway area shown is to the street, not property line. House area includes egress window area. I don't really have the context to be able to interpret that note. Could we, can that be clarified, please, what that note is talking about?
Is that addressed to me?
Yes, I guess it is. It's your document you supplied, correct?
Yeah, no problem.
Yes.
So
Could you explain what that note means?
Yeah, that came from the contractor. Basically, in looking at the site survey, on the left-hand side of that, which I believe that's also in the packet, the site survey. At least it was part of the materials that we had to submit. It listed out the impervious surfaces, and that calculation was incorrect, and it included like the egress windows, which apparently aren't supposed to count towards that, and the driveway going all the way down to the street. So that was including about 15 extra feet. So it looked even worse in the original, if you use those original numbers. And so that was them saying that just bringing down that total amount of impervious hardcover to a more manageable number.
Okay, I see.
Commissioner Rudolph?
So my question is, if the driveway was, so this is for city staff, in the impervious calculation, do we go to 12 feet of the street line where it's the midpoint where we're using that calculation, or are we going all the way to the street? And then two is, what do we do on commercial applicants that we've seen recently going where we go all the way to the whole footprint of, I think what I remember correctly, of the site?
Commissioner Rudolph, the first part of your question, it is not all the way to the street. The impervious surface calculation is just within the property lines. So whatever part of the driveway is outside of the property line is not calculated as part of the total impervious surfaces. I can't talk to commercial impervious surface. I would assume it would just always be within the property boundaries. But Melissa can add.
Commissioner Rudolph, I believe you're referring to a provision of the code that allows us to look at boulevard space in certain circumstances. That is allowed under planned unit developments. In general, it's considered to allow sidewalks and things that extend into the boulevard that contribute to active uses to contribute to the project's requirements related to that. So there are certain provisions in the PUD section of the code that allow you to extend your calculation area out to the end of the boulevard. There isn't anything like that in the R district, which is where this property is located.
Now, if there was somehow a miscalculation on utilizing the driveway through that street, I would assume that would then bring it, if that would be correct, back into compliance where they wouldn't need a variance.
Commissioner Rudolph, the numbers that you see as part of the application are the numbers within the property lines. So whatever part between the property line and the street that is paved is not included in that calculation.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to understand, that where there was a note on the calculations are not correct. If maybe there was a mistake made, we're all human.
Yeah, in the original survey, there was maybe a mistake made. In the materials that you have as part of the packet, it's the actual calculations within the property lines.
Commissioner Keneally?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Stursa asked my question regarding other paid services that could be reduced.
All right, thank you. All right, everyone, I'd like to open the public hearing. Not sure how many callers we'll have for this, but I'm going to open it and we can move on to the next steps. So the number is 612-861-0651. You can call in right now and you'll get some instructions on how to share your opinion. Staff, did we have any letters or calls ahead of the meeting to share on this item?
Chair Crom, we did not.
Okay. Staff, do we have any callers on hold for this item?
Chair Kwan, we do not have any callers.
All right, we'll just wait 30 seconds again. 612-861-0651. Okay, I'm going to move that we close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second, Commissioner Hanson.
Sorry, that was Chair Kwan. Thanks. Public hearing is closed. So before the commissioners go into their discussion, okay, Melissa?
Chair Kwan, would you like me to take roll?
Yes, please. Would you take roll in closing the public hearing?
Yes. Chair Kwan.
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Holmberg Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Keneally.
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph.
Aye.
Commissioner Stursa.
Aye.
Commissioner Surma.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you. So now the public hearing is closed. Mr. Kruger, if you wanted to share whatever you want, and then we'll have the commissioners discuss, feel free. Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just wanted to address the practical difficulties question because you brought it up. And the majority of staff's responses to the other criteria were all regarding the size of the pool. So we addressed that. But the practical difficulties section, I just wanted to say that we did a data request of past variances. The language that we used for that section was basically word for word from other past variances, basically saying that the code was preventing us from doing something reasonable, and those were the practical circumstances or practical difficulties behind it. So that language is word for word out of other past variances. Other than changing the code numbers and the specific thing that we're talking about.
Would you mind repeating the last part of that? The code is preventing you, what, how did you interpret that?
Yeah, so under the practical difficulties section, if you look at our application, the language that we used in that talks about the code preventing us from doing the thing that we want. So kind of if X, then Y. That language is taken almost word for word out of other past applications for variances, just changing out the actual numerical references to code and what the code is preventing us from doing.
Okay, did you want to share anything else before we?
No, I just wanted to make sure that we addressed that concern of yours.
Absolutely. No, I'm just, all right, thank you. So now, commissioners, time for discussion and further questions of either staff or the applicant. Commissioner Hanson?
One thing that's been kind of hanging in my thoughts is that I know the applicant has talked about that he'd be willing to do a civil engineering study to, I guess, show no adverse impacts. But of course, we don't have information tonight of what a study like that would show. So it seems like we're making a decision without a major piece of information. I just wonder, would it make sense to table the agenda item tonight with the idea of asking the applicant to do the study, and then with that information in hand, make a decision going forward.
This is Chair Quam. My thought on that is that study is talking about stormwater, you mean, Commissioner Gordon?
That's what I believe the applicant was indicating. You could confirm or correct me on that.
So I don't see how that would help us meet the variance criteria, honestly. It would, I guess it would say it's in the spirit of in harmony with the purposes and intent of the zoning ordinance, so it would help meet that 5th criteria.
Yeah, I was just thinking the ultimate goal is to make sure that this project, doesn't adversely impact stormwater management, and that study would, I guess, give us an indication on, would it or would it not.
I don't, Chair Quam, I don't see that as being the ultimate indicator, because we are bound by law on these criteria. I mean, this has happened to us before where someone made a beautiful driveway a little, too wide, but we couldn't approve that even though we wanted to. And it was reasonable to have that size driveway, not to stir up old wounds, sorry, but I don't see
Could I address Commissioner Hansen's question?
I'm sorry, but if a question is directed to you specifically, okay?
I apologize. I thought it had been.
It's tempting to jump in.
Yeah, I guess I'd be okay for Mr. Kruger to address the question.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, we had added that in to exactly the point of being in harmony and spirit with the code. In the past, the Planning Commission has approved variances with conditions to be able to. So I was kind of preemptively saying, hey, we're happy to make that a condition of approving the variance to make sure that we're hitting that notch. To be perfectly honest, we wanted to do that provisionally as opposed to preemptively because there's quite a bit of cost involved in that.
Okay, Melissa, then Commissioner Rudolph, then Commissioner Stursa.
Chair Quam, I just wanted to address a couple of things. First of all, the condition. Yes, in many cases, we do condition variances on certain things. That doesn't mean that you don't have to make those findings. For instance, if the commission can make the findings required or can come to agreement and find that these conditions are met, you can still add conditions. So you could, if you found all these other things were met, you could say, we approve this variance because we make the following findings conditioned upon the applicant getting a civil survey that shows there will be no impact to stormwater. You could condition it on that. In that way, you would be saying, yes, we believe this variance meets the criteria. If it can offset, the applicant would be able to move forward without coming back to you if they could meet that condition. If they could not meet that condition, if a survey came back and said that there is an impact, the project would be halted.
Thank you. Commissioner Rudolph?
Yeah, it's a two-part question and also a follow-up, and it really goes into what I think my understanding of the goal of impervious coverage is for stormwater runoff, if I'm correct. Would that be a correct assumption, Melissa?
Commissioner Rudolph, I think it is a multi-pronged condition. Yes, there is absolutely a stormwater component to it. Part of it is aesthetic, and you would have to ask the council that voted it in for all of their reasons, but I don't believe it is one single reason.
So the second part to that question is, many times in Richfield we'll have like a stormwater drains or things like that. For those things, this is to the applicant, how is the pool drained? Because I kind of see them, even though they're completely unrelated, see them very similar in they both would also kind of catch water when it does rain. How does the pool drain?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's built-in drainage capabilities in the pool, which is, and I'm just being honest here, which is why a lot of municipalities actually carve out swimming pools as not being a part of their impervious code, because it's not the same as a driveway or a patio or something like that. There's built-in drainage capabilities. So we were trying to work within staff's interpretation that pools are a part of the impervious surface restrictions. And so we did try to build in actually additional drainage as if it was just a flat concrete slate to be able to mitigate any potential things. And that was actually the things that we were asked to remove by city engineering. They didn't want actually more water going down into the ground. In case of a storm, they want it just going off into 65th, I assume.
I find that odd that we would, I think there is a practical difficulty there with you being asked by, and I don't need you to respond anymore, city designers to remove some of the things that for stormwater drainage that you've already tried to incorporate in your design, being thoughtful of that. I think we do have the option to look at this, in those manners, as well as to ask of that there is no, I'm looking at 3%. It's not that much, but also, to make sure there is, I think, and that can be in our purview, to make sure that there is a report that there won't be any adverse effects. And I would be completely for that, putting those conditions on that.
Commissioner Stursa?
Thank you, Chair Quam. I'm looking at the variance requirements listed in the staff report, and I just do not understand how this application could, that there are unusual or unique circumstances that do not apply to other properties. I cannot in good conscience say that this proposal meets that requirement. And having not met that requirement, all other conversation is mute to me. Like we could talk about other, surveys or other mitigating factors but if we don't meet the standard of unusual or unique circumstances, it doesn't matter. And so, I love pools. I totally respect your desire to have one. And at the same time, we have variance requirements that say that there has to be something unique or unusual. And I just don't see that this meets that at all. And so therefore, I don't think any other evidence, I don't think that trying to mitigate it in other ways is reasonable, because we can't grant in my mind, we shouldn't grant the variance. Thank you.
Commissioners? Chair Quam, thanks for saying it more eloquently than I could. Commissioner Stursa, I think, a variance is our toughest thing to be flexible on. We can't really be flexible. It's how we're interpreting it quasi legally. So we're pretty learned this the hard way in the past. So on other things, we have quite a bit of gray area flexibility, but we don't on this. Our city attorney was part of the last one we did, because they appealed it to the city council. And so, I can't support it as is. And I do believe that if commissioners decide it does meet the 5 criteria or 6, in order to do that tonight, say it does meet it, I think staff, don't they have to articulate how it meets it, or what's the process if enough commissioners think it does meet the 5 or 6 criteria, they would have to state how it meets it, correct?
Chair Quam, yes, you would, if somebody were to make a motion, you would have to, you'd have to state how the findings are met. So you could, I move to finding that, yeah, you'd have to state how they were met.
Thanks, Nellie. Commissioner Rudolph?
I find that actually, as a question of city staff, I find that inconsistent with how we've done business before, whether it's on developments or even PUDs where we have to answer these questions. We've never really had to answer them in that kind of manner on any other development or any that includes variances within them. It's a troubling question that we would need to do it here.
Commissioner Rudolph? I would say that this is actually consistent with the way we have handled variances in the past. PUDs are different, as are conditional use permits. There are different requirements. But generally, if you are finding that you would like to make a motion that is different from what staff has presented to you, we will ask you to make findings so that we can present those to the city council if they are considered next, or incorporate them into the written resolution. So we do ask you whether it's totally formal or it's a little more casual, saying, I do believe there are unique circumstances because of this, and for that reason, I am moving to recommend approval. You could do that. It doesn't have to be super formal. You do have to state your reasons so that staff can articulate those in a resolution.
Does someone want to make a motion, or is there more discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move that we adopt Resolution 241 denying the variance.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Stursa, so second.
Thank you. Okay, more discussion on that motion? Okay, staff, would you take roll on?
Yes,
Commissioner
Quam?
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson?
I'm just going to say that I actually know the applicant, and to avoid any conflict of interest, I'm going to abstain.
Thank you. Commissioner Holmberg Johnston?
Aye.
Commissioner Keneally?
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph?
Nay.
Commissioner Stursa?
Aye.
Commissioner Surma?
Nay.
Let's see, that is 4 ayes. The motion passes.
Okay, so that is there, and then is there any other possible recourse, or should they talk to staff about any other options going forward, Melissa?
Yes, thank you, Chair Quam. I did want to sort of informally poll the commission. You know, sometimes in a case where something does maybe seem sort of reasonable, but it doesn't meet the criteria, the real way to look at that is through an ordinance change. If this is truly something that is reasonable in this case, maybe, and 3 of you thought that it could be, or 2, then maybe it's looking at an actual change to the code. In this instance, I informally wanted to put out before you this idea that Mr. Kruger brought up, that perhaps pools should not be considered impervious.
I think that would be a fantastic idea to the code, because, you know, if you look at.
Wait, just a minute. Let Melissa finish, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Quam. So just as an informal discussion, obviously nothing would be decided here tonight. We can't do that. But if that is something that the commission feels like would be a worthwhile thing for Mr. Kruger to look into, that is certainly something that staff could help with.
I would certainly support that notion. I think that was a great point that I frankly hadn't thought of, is that a pool is kind of a collector of water. It's not like a driveway, which essentially sheds water.
Yeah, I'd be really interested in hearing why a pool shouldn't be counted in considering an ordinance change, but I don't know enough about it to say which way, but I am very interested in that.
Yeah, I just agree that there's more room for nuance in the code of this when it comes to pools like this. Like you said, collector of water. There's drainage there. There's stormwater implications. It's not just like pouring a patio, like you said.
Thank you. So I'll just let Mr. Kruger know that he can get in touch with Ryan or Nellie, and it would be a little bit longer of a process than I'm sure you would prefer, but it might be an option.
Does that sound like a good plan, considering the vote? Mr. Kruger, I hope you pursue it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming and all you shared. Okay, so that's the end of that public hearing. So we move on to our liaison reports from the people who did it, who are doing it currently. The first is Community Services Advisory Commission. Do you have a report? Commissioner Rudolph?
No report.
Okay, thank you. City Council person is no longer here. HRA, do you have a report?
No report.
Thank you. Transportation Commission report?
No report.
And that's the only people that are here in attendance that have a liaison role. So that's the end of our liaison reports. City planners reports, please.
Yes, Chair Quam. There's nothing to report other than a few work sessions that are planned on March 8th with the City Council and the HRA, on April 25th, just Planning Commission only, and then on April 26th with this joint with the City Council. And those are all planned for, I believe, 6 p.m. Yeah, otherwise there's nothing else to report.
Commissioner Sturza?
I was just curious if there was any update to the brewery application. I know that we just, if there was an update or if we anticipate that it will come before the commission or anything in that space.
Commissioner Sturza, the last update we've had from the applicant is that they are still working with the neighbors and that they again hope to have an application for the March meeting.
Thank you.
This is Chair Quam. I was wondering, staff, if we could possibly get those 3 meetings emailed to us. Could you do that to the commission, just in one email, so we can kind of keep track of them?
Yes, Chair Quam, I'll send that. Oh.
Commissioner Rudolph, thank you.
Chair Quam, I'd also like to request that we start getting some of those things in a meeting invite. For those of us that keep calendars, that we'll just save it to our calendars.
Commissioner Rudolph, I think we can figure something out. We don't usually create the WebEx meetings until closer to the actual meeting, but okay. I can see if I can send something out, like a calendar.
Maybe even a placeholder, and then just update the meeting with the WebEx information at that point.
Okay, anything else? Hope we didn't scare off the new commissioners.
We're happy to meet all the new ones for sure.
Yeah.
It's good to see new faces.
Thanks for your participation so early on too. Commissioner Rudolph?
Is there any word on any forecasts on when we'll be able to go back on site to City Hall for to resume our meetings?
Commissioner Rudolph, there hasn't been a decision on that. The city council did talk briefly about it at their meeting last week. I was not at that meeting, but they have made no decision yet. My understanding is that they are perhaps waiting until positivity rates are under 5%. But I will try to have an update. We will obviously let you know. There needs to be at least 2 weeks notice for posting meetings. So these upcoming meetings, this March 8th meeting, it will be virtual. That is certain. We'll give you plenty of warning.
Thank you.
All right, I don't know, I don't remember if you said our next but I'll repeat it. Our next regular planning commission meeting is on March 28th, 2022 at 7 p.m. to be determined if it's on WebEx or at City Hall. Thanks to everybody for being here, and the applicants who are gone now, thanks for your participation. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you both. Any discussion on adjourning? All right, staff, would you please take roll?
Chair Quam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Holmberg Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Keneally,
Aye.
Commissioner Rudolph,
Aye.
Commissioner Stursa,
Aye.
Commissioner Surma. Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Melissa. Good night, everybody.